Welcome to episode 4 of In Your Element, a gaming podcast. I'm your host, Matthew Adler. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest, Mr. Patrick Hickey Jr. Patrick has amassed a career spanning media, journalism, and education and is here to talk to us about his new book, The Minds Behind the Games, Interviews with Cult and Classic Video Game Developers. Patrick, how are you doing today?
Doing pretty good, Matt, especially after that introduction. Damn, that was good.
Yeah, you like that?
Yeah, you're good, man. I feel somewhat important, like people should actually listen for like the next hour or so.
Yeah. I'm hoping. Wow. So thank you.
Yeah,
I appreciate you coming
problem.
on. Why don't you take a moment to give the listeners a little insight into your background?
So I am the author of The Minds Behind the Games, Interviews with Cult and Classic Video Game Developers. I'm also a former editor at NBC and national video games writer at Examiner.com. I'm also the editor-in-chief of ReviewFix.com, and I am the assistant director of the journalism program at Kingsborough Community College in Brooklyn, New York. So, yeah, I've been involved in journalism for about 15 years. I've been an educator for about 12. Married, baby, cat, dog, your good old middle-class upbringing. That's me.
And do I detect a New York accent there?
Yes, born and raised in good old Brooklyn, New York. Forget about it.
Forget about it. How's the pizza?
It's great. It's like I was watching Family Guy the other night, and they had like a cutaway to somebody from New York, like complaining about somebody else's pizza, and it's totally true. It's like whenever you go somewhere else, you're like, "This is your pizza," and they're like, "Yeah." I went to Chicago, and I mean, their deep dish is pretty good, but it's nothing compared to
nothing compares to that New York slice.
Yeah, that New York slice is very, very good.
I agree. I've only been to New York a few times, but every time I go, it's a must to get pizza at every single like mom and pop shop there is.
Yeah, I make a habit of whenever I have friends from out of state, I try and get them a good slice of pizza. The guy that wrote the foreword to The Minds Behind the Games, Brett Weiss, he's an awesome video game historian, and he's a solid journalist in his own right. And he had never been, so we walked over the Brooklyn Bridge together, and then we went to some retro game shops, and then we had to have a slice of pizza. But I told him, like, one of the places we went to, I was like, it was like Famous Ray's, and there's like 1,000 of them. Ooh. So I'm like, this is like a 6 on a scale from 1 to 10. I just want you to know. And he's like, oh, it's okay. I'm like, yeah, it's okay by like, New York standard.
All right, on the record, what's the best pizza out
there? Man, that's a tough question. Oh my god, it's like almost impossible. It's like right now there's a place near my house called Fratelli's, and they have a really good buffalo chicken slice that like I love. And my wife gets the spinach artichoke slice from there, so it's really good. But then there's another place like not too far called Spumoni Gardens, and if you want like a square slice, that's where you go for the square slice. It's like all sauce. It's like a soggy, cheesy, deep mess. It's amazing.
Just get all in there. Love it.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I love me a good pizza. We don't have over here on the West Coast. We've got some good spots. There's a spot in San Diego that I used to go to called Bronx Pizza, which was hands down the best pizza. It was New York style, of course.
Yeah.
Super good. But yeah, I'm out here in the desert now. Just not the jam for pizza.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to let you know where you can find In Your Element on social media. We've got Instagram set up over at In Your Element Podcast, Twitter at IYE Podcast, Facebook page set up over at In Your Element Podcast. Join your fellow elementalists on Patreon over at patreon.com/inyourelement. And we've got a Discord server available exclusively for patrons to hang out and chat with myself and the community. And if you have any questions or comments, email me at inyourelementpodcast@gmail.com. I will answer your questions on the next episode of In Your Element. Let's hop into news real quick, where we've got a couple stories this week. First one is Hollow Knight has swept the Nintendo eShop charts. This from over at NintendoEnthusiast.com. According to them, Hollow Knight left the competition in the dust this week on the eShop. It took first place for both download-only games and for all games in general. It makes sense that Hollow Knight is topping the charts right now. The game is currently on sale through August 27th, that's today, to celebrate Godmaster, a new free expansion. Godmaster adds new quests, boss battles, secrets to uncover, and romance options. We spoke briefly about Hollow Knight in last week's episode where I covered the remainder of my gaming history. I pointed out that Hollow Knight was one of the best games I've played this year on Switch and in general. Patrick, have you had a chance to check out Hollow Knight?
Yes, I absolutely have, and I completely agree. I was just telling somebody, one of my best friends, a little while ago that he needed to pick it up today. I said that it's probably one of the best non-Nintendo games on the Switch, like third-party games.
Oh yeah, easy.
I loved the Wonder Boy remake on the Switch, and I've kind of been fiending for that like simple, straight ahead yet deep and provocative like side scroller with some RPG elements. And like I like Dead Cells, and there's a lot of other games that I like on there, but like there's just something about the simplicity and beauty of Hollow Knight.
Oh yeah, it's an incredible game. And when I first hopped in, I had no idea like what the game was. I just knew that it had a lot of praise over on Steam. Yep. And I was like excited to check it out, and I jumped in, and I was lost at first, but it was the sense of like exploration and that whole Metroidvania style, which I love so much. So
it's super easy to get lost in that game too, which is the best part, you know?
Yeah. Sprawling map and everything. When I was first playing, I felt I was like 10 hours in, I want to say. And I was like just kind of at a point where I didn't know where to go. And I looked up online, and I did not want to look up anything on that game just to spoil. But I looked up online just a map, and I accidentally saw a screenshot of the whole map. And the point that I had uncovered at that time, 10 hours in, was like maybe a quarter or a fifth of the whole map. And I was like, oh shit, We've got a long way to go in this game. Yeah, so just a reminder, Hollow Knight sale concludes today, August 27th. So make sure you check that game out while it's on sale. I believe it is less than $10 right now on Steam and on the eShop. The second game on the list of top selling games for the eShop is Dead Cells, which I failed to mention last week that I started playing recently. I've been focusing most of my attention on finishing Octopath Traveler, but I've put about 5 hours into Dead Cells so far and loving every minute. Patrick, you mentioned you played Dead Cells. How far in are you?
Yeah, I enjoy it too. I'm only about 2 hours into the game, but I have to be honest, like I am completely still enthralled with West of Loathing and Songbringer. There's a whole bunch of like indie games that I've been playing, and then like I get games to review like every day. Yeah. So I just got Dragon Cafe. So like I just jumped into that. So it's insane. It's insane.
That's cool, man. Yeah, I've been wanting to check out West of Loathing. It looks kind of cool.
West of Loathing is definitely in that it's a completely different game from Hollow Knight and Wonder Boy, but it's this amazing indie experience. There's not a better written indie game on the Nintendo Switch right now.
It's like genuinely funny writing, right?
It's like you're in the church and you're walking by like the pews in the church, and your character is going pew 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 pew. There's a part where you're in this carnival, and there's this clown, and you ask for a balloon, and you ask if it floats, and then the clown says they all float around here, you know. So there's references galore. It's super smart, it's super funny, but the combat system is deep. I love it. It's an amazing game.
Yeah, I just found out recently it was like based on a Flash game. It was like an internet Flash game.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And you're going to be the first person that finds out about this. This is exclusive just to you. But I also I am writing a sequel to the minds behind the games, and West of Loathing is actually featured in the second book. So
oh man, I'll have to check that out for sure. I'll definitely pick up the game before then. It's like $11, right? Some weird price point.
And it's totally worth it. Like it's another one of those games where you will get completely lost, and you're going to have to absolutely use the strategy guide at some point, because there are some puzzles where you're like, how the hell am I supposed to do this? And then when you kind of like get the first hint, and you'll want to stop reading, because you'll be like, oh, I think I could do the rest myself. You know, it's like, it's just a really, really good. It's an old school RPG with a really unique art style and just an amazing writing.
It's like black and white and like stick figures, right?
Black and white, stick figured. Excellent, but excellent music too. Yeah,
I'll definitely check it out. It
totally works.
Very cool. Rounding out the list of the top eShop games for the week, numbers 3 through 10 are as follows: Overcooked 2, which I'm still looking to check out; Okami HD, Minecraft, Rocket League, Stardew Valley, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Octopath Traveler, and finally Arcade Archives versus Super Mario Bros. So a lot of the same ones that have been on the list for a while. Nice to see, though. Dead Cells up there and Hollow Knight at the very top. Second news item this week, Sony's limited edition PS4 bundle commemorating 500 million in sales went live early morning August 24th and sold out within minutes, as you'd expect. With only 50,000 available, scalpers are having a heyday, selling them online for almost $1,000 each. If you missed your chance, crazy. If you missed your chance to score one of these sexy translucent blue consoles, you can still purchase the limited edition DualShock 4 controllers up for $65 and the limited edition PlayStation Gold headset for $100. And so, I actually just, my PlayStation Gold headset kind of bit the dust finally. I've had it for a while. It's not a bad headset. It's nice because it's under $100, but there's definitely better stuff out there.
Sure.
Especially in that price range. So Sony's also releasing 4 new DualShock 4 designs available September 24th for $65. They will be available in berry, blue camouflage, sunset, orange, and copper. Patrick, what are your thoughts on this limited edition PS4 Pro?
You smell that? It smells like Nintendo 64 marketing.
Yes, totally.
Today, which was fine. I mean, I had like 4 different color Nintendo 64 controllers. It's just now, like, I really don't like care the color of the, I remember when I got the Switch for my birthday last year, and like the person at Toys R Us said, "Oh, we only have the black one," and I really wanted the red and the blue one.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, "Hey, you know what? I don't care. I just want to play it." But for all those cute little teenagers and stuff, they can have their berry colored controllers and their copper. Like, listen.
Yeah.
I don't have $65 to throw at a controller for different color.
Yeah. Right.
So.
See, I'm on the other
still
end.
Cool.
I love the color. I love the different color waves. I actually picked up it was like a glacier blue. It was another like translucent one that came out like 6 months ago. But it's one of those things that you don't go through controllers very quickly. I mean, I've had the same launch PS4 controller that I've been using since launch, and when I got my Pro, obviously came with a new one. But I mean, they last pretty long, so I don't know why you gotta pick up controllers every so often. But yeah, I think we're definitely in this resurgence of the Nintendo 64 style translucent colors. It seems a lot of different companies coming out.
Hey,
with
listen,
right now.
if like you want to be trendy and do it and stuff like that, that's awesome, man. It's just for me. Yeah, I have two PS4 controllers, and as long as they don't break, I ain't getting another one. So
that's fair. I appreciate it. Awesome. Well, those are just a couple news stories I thought were interesting this past week. Let's move into the featured section for the episode, our interview with you, Patrick. So let's start with your book. You recently released your new book titled The Minds Behind the Games, Interviews with Cult and Classic Video Game Developers. Tell me a little bit about your inspiration for the book.
So I've been running reviewfix.com for about 9 years, and I would say in about August or September of 2016, I read The 100 Greatest Video Games 1977 to 1987 by Brett Weiss. It's from Schiffer Publishing, and it was just this really great coffee table book. I had owned a ton of the games that were featured in the book, but then there was a lot more. Like, I easily went out and bought 25 to 30 of the games that were featured in there that I didn't have, that I didn't even know existed. And it's a really pretty reference book. But the thing is, Brett's writing style, it's more than a reference book, because there's a lot of them out there. There's a lot of reference books out where they just kind of like describe what the game is in a paragraph, this minimalist writing style, but Brett wrote, like a nice chunk of information about the gameplay systems at play, like the legacy of the game. And I was just like, wow, this is an amazing book. And I just said to myself, I think I could do something like this. Mm-hmm. So I kind of sat around for a couple of months, and I didn't move forward with it. And then I was at a point in my career in academics where, I was 33 years old. I had a full-time job. Like, my whole future was like kind of planned out for me. And I was, my wife was pregnant, and I was just like, I need to do something that I've never done before. That kind of spices things up a little bit,
Yeah.
And I've been writing for so long, like I was an editor at NBC for a while, and I love my site. I love Review Fix. It's like some guys have like, cars in their garage that they restore, and some people do this. I collect video games and I run an entertainment website. Those are like my two
Yeah.
like babies and stuff. But it's like I wanted a new adventure. So I said, like Brett had that style down, and I'm like, I'm never going to rip somebody off. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do like an interview anthology. I'm going to reach out to these people that have made some of these games, like some of the games that have affected me, not the games that were in Brett's book. And I'm going to allow them to tell their stories, because one of my favorite things to do as a journalist is to interview people.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, I'm going to go out and I'm going to contact as many people as I can. And I figured, 15, 20 games, a lot of pictures, like 1,000 words, a chapter, like a coffee table book, a fun coffee table book.
Mm-hmm.
So then I reached out to 6 different developers, and it was like Howard Scott Warshaw, who did E.T. and Yar's Revenge, David Crane, who did Pitfall and A Boy and His Blob, John Van Keeganham, who did Heroes of Might and Magic, Michael Menheim, who did Mutant League Football. I reached out to all these guys, and I was like, if half of them get back to me, then I think I have like a good start to write the book. And then ironically, within like a week, all 6 got back to me. So I was like, oh my God. So I banged out like 4 out of the 6 chapters, like as fast as I could.
Yeah.
And so now we're around like Thanksgiving, and I sent pitches out to a bunch of publishers, and 3 days later, McFarlane contacted me, and they're like, we would love to like publish this book. However, we're thinking that like you're a writer, you've written a lot of like long interviews and stuff. We don't want like short chapters. We want you to dig deeper. We want you to try and get like at least 75,000 words for this book. And I'm like, so I'm gonna need. I wanted 15 games, 10 to 15 games. I'm gonna need like at least 25.
Mm-hmm.
So by the end of it all, I had 36, and instead of the book being 75,000 words, it was 100,000 words. So I wanted to like kind of do like my homage to like Brett Weiss when I first started this, but I ended up like just writing something completely different that's like completely unique to me. So each chapter is around like 3,500 words, and it's like a nice, like each chapter probably takes around 15 minutes to read, and it just takes you inside the game and the creator's legacy and what the game means to the video game industry. And I mean, I'm super proud of it. Because I think there's a huge problem especially in the video game community, where people adopt critics' opinions as their own. Though, I mean, how many times have you heard somebody say that they've played a game when they haven't?
Mm-hmm.
It happens all the time. So I wanted to write a book where I kind of like dispelled a lot of the rumors and innuendo about classic, cult, and indie games, and just educated, entertained, and informed people at the same time.
That's awesome, man. Very cool. It
Thanks.
sounds like definitely something that I don't think has been really tapped into very much. That the development side of the gaming industry.
Mm-hmm.
So it's cool to really shed light on that. In your book, you feature interviews, as you mentioned, with 36 popular video game creators, including Deus Ex, Night Trap, Mortal Kombat, Wasteland, and NBA Jam. Of all the games you covered and creators you spoke with, who do you think had the most interesting story?
That's the thing. Like, I was talking to somebody about it yesterday, and I was just saying, I don't think there's, and it's not, I'm not the most humble person in the world. I'll be the first person to admit it. But I really don't think there's a throwaway chapter in this entire book. I think like every single person tells an interesting story. However, if I had to pick just one, I'm not going to pick one developer, but I'll pick one game, and that's Night Trap. Night Trap got thrown under a bus, run over, stepped on, kicked, and then like thrown in the sewer during the whole ESRB rating system creation of the mid-90s. And it's just sad because, truth be told, Night Trap was the least violent game out of all of the games that kind of were under the scrutiny of the United States government at the time. Like Lethal Enforcers, Doom. I'm trying to think of the other games. Mortal Kombat. Night Trap is the least violent out of all of those. It's just Night Trap has hot women in it too. So it's kind of like, Night Trap was originally also supposed to be released in like 1987.
Yeah.
So imagine if Super Mario Brothers on the NES didn't come out in 1985, it came out in 1991. People would go, "Oh, this is like an okay game, but this is like nothing special."
Right.
So Night Trap came out in 93, 94 when it was supposed to come out in 1987.
Yeah, so it was like way behind.
Exactly. It was cheesy, it was schlocky. If you can control a B horror movie in 1987, that game would have, think about it this way, Dragon's Lair. People love Dragon's Lair. It's kind of like the same technology as Dragon's Lair, except it's not animated, it's live action. So this game would have been absolutely huge. But then what happened was it was originally supposed to be released on a system called the Nemo, which was a VHS-based console. Oh, wow. So what happened was they were trying to sell it, and Toys R Us was like, listen, if you sell it for this much, you're going to be millionaires. But if you sell it for this much, no one's going to want to buy it. So what do you want to do? And the guys from Project Nemo, which was actually a Hasbro subsidiary, they were, and that's the thing too, would Hasbro make a game or a console that wasn't family friendly? Absolutely not. It goes against everything that whole brand stands for.
Right.
You know? So the game was anything but like out there. It was a crappy like B horror movie that was hilarious that you got to control. So anyway, so the people at Hasbro opted to go for the higher price point, and none of the stores thought that it would be, you know, a worthwhile product to keep in their stores. So the whole system got canned. It was never released. And then 5 or 6 years later, Sega had the Sega CD, and they offered to, you know, pick up Sewer Shark, Ground Zero Texas, Night Trap, all of those full motion video games that had never seen the light before.
Yeah.
So now people are playing them and they're like, oh, this is like kind of stupid. And it's like, oh. And at the time though, when Night Trap was originally created, there was probably only about 25 people in the entire world that would be able to program a game like that. It was cutting edge technology. These guys had like almost no idea what they were doing while they were doing it.
Yeah.
And one of the lead programmers on the game was Rob Phillip, who programmed Missile Command, Atlantis. He programmed some of the greatest Atari 2600 games of all time. David Crane worked on it, who was another guy, another classic video game developer, worked on Pitfall, you know. So when the game was originally released, you know, for the Sega CD, and the Senate like kind of jumped down, the United States government tried to destroy it. Rob Phillip, his girlfriend left him because of it.
Oh wow.
So it's like a video game developer. You're like a legend in your made some of the greatest games on the Atari 2600. You've been working in the industry now for like 20 years. You make this game, it doesn't get released. 6 years later, it gets released. Now you're getting all this backlash. Your girlfriend leaves you. It's like, it's kind of crappy. Yeah. So what he decided to do was, he was like, listen, if I'm going to be remembered for creating like the most controversial game of all time, I'm going to make something that is like so cute that no one will ever remember Night Trap again. So he created Dogs and Cats, which those games, if you've played them, Ubisoft bought the license like 10 years ago, and they've released a ton of games on like Nintendo DS and Nintendo 3DS and stuff.
Yeah, it's incredible.
But they've sold 40 million combined copies. So
it's always seemed like they were everywhere.
Like
every little kid that had a DS
the late 90s, and it was a computer game originally, and kids were like trading their pets like via floppy disk, and totally bit off of like Rob Phillip's idea. Phillip's idea, and created Nintendogs. So without Night Trap, you wouldn't have Dogs and Cats, and without Dogs and Cats, you'd never have Nintendogs. So that's the thing. That's one of the reasons why I love the chapter so much, because when we think of video games, we don't think of people that were inspired by something else. We think of people that were creating something brand new. But we're at a really interesting point in video game history now, because games are influenced by other games now. The lack of originality is starting to kind of like, it's starting to become a factor in the way people design their games.
Because
now all the developers growing up played
getting
games.
rebooted. God of War, Tomb Raider,
Yep.
in recent past. Resident Evil, I mean, kind of got a semi reboot, even though it's going back to its roots. And number 2 that's coming out again. And yeah, I mean, I think we've seen that in the movie theater industry too. The cinemas, you know, they're rehashing everything from the 80s again. So it's a cycle. I think where it's interesting to see that we're at that point already in such a young media format with gaming. But you know, there's been some good stuff that's come out of it too.
Well, see, the thing is too, there's so many more games are released than films. You know?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So it's like the industry, and the thing is though, I talked about this the other day on another podcast, but we'll have a better conversation on this one. The industry has found ways to self-correct itself. So like the whole ESRB rating system, they created that so the government would stay out of their business. And now you kind of have, in the 90s and early 2000s, you had a ton of movie-based video games that just didn't sell. You had games that were ported 8 or 9 times. Like, do we really need like Tony Hawk Pro Skater on like the Game Boy Color, you know, like on 1,000 different systems? No, we don't need it. And then the thing is, it gave developers work, but they also weren't able to like leverage the technology. Like nobody wants to play NHL on the Game Boy Color.
No.
You know, but they released it every year, you know?
Right.
So that just doesn't happen anymore. So the industry is a lot smarter. The video game industry is a lot smarter than the movie and music industry. They kind of understand. They have their finger on the pulse a lot better than other forms of media and pop culture.
Yeah. Cool, man. Well, was there anything about the development process specifically that surprised you?
What about Night Trap?
Just in general, with any of the interviews that you had.
These guys, I mean, blood, sweat, and tears is a huge understatement. And most of the games that are featured in the first book had very small development teams. So we're talking, some of these guys were working 20 hours a day for 5 or 6 weeks to finish some of their games. Like I said, they lost loved ones. They didn't spend a lot of time with friends. Matt Thorson, who is he's infamous now for Celeste, because Celeste is such an amazing game. He created Towerfall as well, and that's a great game. And he talks about in the chapter how it helped him like kind of come out of his shell, because Towerfall is a party game, you know. But I remember when I was writing that chapter, I had needed Matt to sign a waiver for my publisher, and without him signing that waiver, I couldn't feature him in the book. So we're getting to like the nitty gritty. I have like a couple of weeks to hand in my all of my manuscript and everything, and I'm like, Matt, please just sign the release. Like, you read the chapter, you liked it. I contacted him via email, on Instagram, on Twitter, on Steam, like all over the place. And the reason why he wasn't answering, simple. He was developing Celeste. Like he was completely locked, like in wherever he was, and this guy totally put his heart and soul into Celeste. And it's like, that's the reason why when you play that game, if you don't feel something, then you're a communist. You know, because there's definitely something human going on in that game. So that's one of the things that I learned, like that these guys are completely unique, heart on their sleeves. It's one of the things too that I wanted to mention. I wrote it in the introduction that like none of the developers featured in the book were paid to tell their stories. You know, and I think that says a lot, because these guys all have wives, families, they develop games, and they're extremely busy. But the thing is, you could be in a Starbucks with Matt Thorson sitting right next to him, a genius, and not even know who he is.
Right.
But the thing is, if I say, who wrote Romeo and Juliet, you'll go, oh, Shakespeare, duh. You know, or if I say, oh, who sings Thriller, you'll go, Michael Jackson. That's stupid. If I say, oh, who played Captain America in the last Avengers movie, you'll go, Chris Evans. Like, come on, what's up with these easy questions? And then I say, who's the creator of Grand Theft Auto? You'll go, oh, Rockstar. And I'll go, no, not who published the game. Who was the guy that came up with the idea for Grand Theft Auto? You'll go, oh man, I don't know.
Right.
But you spent hundreds of hours of your life playing it.
Yeah.
Like video games, for some reason, the video game industry, these developers don't get the respect and the credit for the things that they've done. And the thing is, none of them are bitter about it at all. You know, they just want to tell their stories when given the opportunity.
Yeah.
So that's probably like the best thing that I learned, that these guys are all super cool and they all want to share their stories.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I do feel like they kind of get the short end of the stick a lot. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, you come out with a game that's overhyped. You look at No Man's Sky that was over promised for a few years
Mm-hmm.
at E3,
Oh, yeah.
and Hello Games shipped that game, and it was not what people expected. And those developers were getting death threats. I mean, that's to me, it's like, why? These are people at the end of the day. You have to
Oh, yeah.
respect the time and effort that they put in, and they went back to their studio and put their heads down and basically got that game to where everybody wanted it to be. And,
Mm-hmm.
now everyone's singing their praises.
Yeah.
But, it's definitely, you're right. They don't get the credit that they deserve, for sure. And these people are creating these experiences that you're spending, I mean, upwards of 100 hours in a lot of games now.
Mm-hmm.
And you go to a movie and you sit down and you watch it for 90 minutes or 2 hours and forget about it, and it's done and you move on. But you know who made that movie, who the actors are, and these gamers the developers rather, just I almost wonder if we're ever going to see the point in the future where we've got the video game voice actors' names featured on the box as if they were actors, since they are. I mean, they're in there recording and everything, and maybe you see the developer's name on the box besides somebody recognizable like Kojima.
Yeah, absolutely. See, and that's the thing too. When I talk to people about like this book, a lot of them will go, "Oh, well, I know who made like this game and that game," and I'm like, and they always say Kojima, and they always say David Jaffe, and they always say Doom and stuff, and I'm like, yes, of course,
Yeah.
but yeah, but I'll say something along the lines of, "Who made Gex?" And they'll
Right.
go, "What? What, you mean that game on like the 3DO and the PlayStation?" I'm like, Gex was yeah, I almost cursed. I'm like,
Yeah.
Gex was amazing. That was an
Yeah.
amazing game that sold millions of copies on the 3DO and the PlayStation 1. That was an amazing game. And then who created Crash Bandicoot? I'm like, yeah, see, come on, man.
Yeah.
And then they'll go, "Oh yeah, you're right. It's funny. It's a funny story. Like this happened a couple of weeks ago, where Brett Weiss, the guy that wrote the foreword to my book, I wrote an article for Medium just talking about why I decided to go on this whole adventure. And he posted it on his book page, because he's written about 5 or 6 video game books, and he posted on the Facebook page for his book series. And this guy responded, and he was all I didn't know if he was being like truthful or sarcastic, because there's no emotion detector on Facebook. And he's just like, "So you're trying to tell me that there are video game developers that we don't know who they are? Like, I call bullshit, blah 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 blah." So then I'm like, you know what? I'm not gonna say anything. I'm not gonna jump in. I didn't create Limbo. Like, the developer of Limbo just like jumps into like every single like forum and stuff like that. I'm like, I'm not gonna do that. And then Brett was like, "Well, I think Patrick Hickey Jr. would disagree." And I'm like, "Oh, Brett, why are you getting me involved in this now?" And this guy just kept talking, and he's like, "So you're trying to tell me that there's somebody that could be in the video game industry for 32 years and no one knows who they are?" And he put like a smiley face. And I'm like, 32 is a pretty specific number, So I started Googling the guy's name, and I started doing a little digging, and I'm like, oh my God. This guy was on development teams for like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Strider, Blood Omen, Legacy of Kain. Like, this guy has 32 years of video game experience. So then I message him, and I started talking to him and stuff, and now we're gonna talk about like 3 of his games for my sequel.
Oh, that's awesome.
But I'm telling he was being totally sarcastic. He totally understood what I was trying to say, trying to do. So I'm happy now that like people are getting to the point where they're like, yeah, we want to know more about these games. Like, when I started doing these interviews, some of the first questions that I would ask these developers is, what's wrong with the Wikipedia page on your game? What information is wrong on there? Because I know there's wrong information on there. And we would just go through stuff. And I that was the first goal and objective, was to dispel a lot of the crappy rumors. Like, E.T. is the worst game of all time. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Not even close to being the worst game of all time.
Yeah.
So, and it would just, Night Trap 2. Night Trap 2, a lot of people talk about Night Trap being the worst game of all time. And absolutely not. So, just kind of trying to get to more of the truth than that we've ever gotten to before in terms of a lot of these games, finding out what really propelled like the vision behind these games and why popular opinion is what it is.
Mm-hmm. What was it like for you peeling back the curtain on some of these classic games?
It's like I'll give you some more exclusive information. Today I got answers back from Sanders Keel, and he was the producer on several of the best wrestling video games of all time, like WCW, NWO Revenge, WrestleMania 2000, WWF No Mercy. And I grew up playing those games. I love professional wrestling, and it's like he gave me answers for my for the next chapter in my sequel on WCW NWO Revenge, and it was just like it was like talking to the Wizard of Oz.
Mm-hmm.
It was like being able to like peel back the curtain,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, and just find out all of the things that I always wondered, like why wasn't Ric Flair in the game? You know, why did this happen? Why did that happen? Why does this happen when you do that? And at first it was cute. It was like, wow, I found out something that like probably nobody knows. And then later on it was like nobody in the world knows this now. Like I know that nobody in the world knows this except for like me and this guy and maybe like 5 or 10 other people.
Right.
And it was amazing. It was like it's probably away from marrying my wife and having my daughter and stuff. It's like some of the greatest moments like in my life. Like I when I spoke to Michael Brook, who was the producer on NHLPA 93, which is like my favorite hockey game of all time, and NHL 94. So he worked on both of those games. Speaking to him on the phone for like an hour, I got off the phone and I had to like take a big deep breath and go, that just happened. You know, so it was amazing, and it's been so cool that it's like it's an experience that I don't want to end. So like I have no plans to ever stop like doing this. Like I'm already working on a sequel, and I plan on releasing collections at some point. Like once I get like 4 or 5 books deep, I would love to release like a new book like every 2 years. That's the
That'd
plan.
be great.
You know, I mean, another 35 or 40 games every 2 years.
I would love to see going through the different eras of gaming too, you know, starting back at Pong and moving forward through Atari and NES and just moving through those eras and seeing the different technologies as they're coming forward for a lot of these developers and how they're utilizing it.
Absolutely. Like it's just so much fun. Like this whole process, it's a lot of work, but it's so much fun. And everyone that's read it so far, like it's got a 5-star rating on Amazon so far, and no one has like said, "Oh, this is shit" so far, which is great. You know, I'm waiting for it. I'm waiting for it because there's gonna be somebody, which is fine. You know, but it's like everyone so far has been pleasantly surprised, or they were like, yeah, like after I read the introduction, I knew that like you weren't taking any crap and like this is what you wanted to do, and I'm like, thank you. So it's like this is an experience that's like it's something that I've always wanted to do, and it's given me a lot more. I've always been pretty confident, but it's given me a lot more confidence to the point where without this book, I would not be a video game voice actor, and I wouldn't be writing the story for a video game right now. So it's like it's changed my life in a myriad of ways. It's made me a better educator. You know, I'm 35 years old. I'm young, but I've been teaching college for 12 years, and now I have a book on my resume. So I feel like I have a lot to offer my students. Like my students, all of them, well, I'd love to write a book one day. I'm like, okay, I could teach you. I could show you how to make that happen. You know, and a couple of years ago, I couldn't do that. So I feel like this book has changed my life in so many like fantastic ways.
That's awesome, man. So Patrick, where do you find a lot of the developers got their inspiration for their titles?
It's interesting because a lot of them featured in the book, they created games when there were no other games to serve as inspiration. So a lot of these guys were creating games based on films that they enjoyed, and books that they enjoyed, music that they enjoyed, and just they basically focused more on tone and the way they wanted the game to make you feel rather than copying or emulating a game that had already come out. So it's pretty interesting. It's like Michael Menheim, who created Mutant League Football, will tell you that, you know, Chicago Bears football in the 70s and the 80s and monster movies were a huge inspiration for Mutant League football. And Howard Scott Warshaw was a massive computer geek, and was into like microprocessing and stuff, and there was a job at Atari, and he was a super creative guy as well, and he was like, you know what, I'm gonna take a crack at this, and I'm gonna see like if I can do this. There was no real like handbook on how to do this. It's like, oh, you know what, I'm gonna make these characters fly around the screen. So a lot of the guys that are featured in the book, they were the ones that came up with these ideas on their own. But at the same time too, pop culture will always find a way. You know, like I'm sure there are times that you've played a game and it made you think of music, or it made you think of a movie or something like that. It's like pop culture just has a way. You know, other forms of art always have a way of influencing like something that we're trying to do, attitude, style, things like that. So just because there wasn't a bevy of games to choose from to get inspiration doesn't mean that there wasn't inspiration to be had.
Yeah, that's very true. During the book writing itself, did you have any interviews that you had to cut that didn't make the final book?
No. Well, the thing was, there was a couple of people that I wanted to feature, and they kind of like disappeared. Alan McNeil, who did Berserk for the arcade and the Atari 2600, that's an excellent like third person shooter for the Atari 2600 and the computer. Two people actually passed away while playing it. It's got an amazing backstory, and it was one of the first games to ever feature like real voice acting. It was like kind of like the king of the arcades before Pac-Man came out. Once Pac-Man came around, it just like kind of killed everything else that was out at the time. But I sent him questions and he just like kind of disappeared. The hope is that I could try and get him for the sequel. His email doesn't even work anymore. The email that I was sending him emails to, like his mother was very sick and she was elderly, so I hope everything's okay with him. But so there was that, and then I wanted to get Donna Bailey, who was one of the creators of Centipede, and she was one of the only women working at Atari during their heyday. But she's just retired, and I'm pretty sure she's working on a memoir. So it makes sense that she wouldn't want to talk to me. Like, why would she give me her story when when she could tell it herself?
So, right? She's like, I'll do this myself.
Yeah. So, but yeah, no, that's the thing too that was cool, because it's like with journalism is weird in the sense because it's not that you're not telling the whole story. You're telling as much of the story as you possibly can, but you have these limits like with word count and an angle and like what your editor wants and what you're trying to tell, what side of the story you're trying to tell, and this and that. And being able to put this book together, I basically came to the conclusion that I was going to use everything that they gave me. So there was very little that didn't get used, which was great.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So you've got this extensive, you mentioned having run Review Fix for 9 years. You've got this extensive history of just games that you've played, good and bad and everything in between. What are some of the games that you grew up playing that you remember from your childhood that really stood out?
Definitely like Super Mario Brothers, Contra, Castlevania, Legend of Zelda, Wonder Boy and Monsterland. Like the Sega Genesis and the Nintendo were like staples in my house. And so just like side-scrolling platformers, beat 'em ups like Streets of Rage and Altered Beast, Golden Axe, Toe Jam and Earl, but then that's the thing, like, I had a dad that was really into the military and, planes and stuff, so I played a lot of Desert Strike and River Raid, and I played everything, and I love sports games, so I'm, the NHL series is probably one of my favorite series of all time, so I played a lot of different games at a super, super young age.
Yeah. That's awesome. Growing up young with the games.
Absolutely.
That's the way to do it, man.
Yep.
Are you going to introduce your daughter into gaming?
Absolutely. Like on my Instagram yesterday, she was playing. She just turned 1.5 years today.
Yeah.
So she was playing Donkey Kong Land 2 on the original Game Boy yesterday.
That's awesome.
So and I have a custom original Game Boy. It's like black with white silicone buttons, backlit screen. It's like it's super sexy. And Yeah, and she was playing that yesterday. She plays my what's it called? My Game Boy Advance, the small, the clamshell one.
The SP.
The SP, yeah. She plays that from time to time. She's getting used to like the buttons, like oh wow, I press this button and then the character does this. So she's definitely gonna play games. She already, like, if you give her an iPhone, she knows how to like get to YouTube.
Oh
like, yeah. So she's super.
That's ingrained in their like DNA now.
Yep. So I totally want her to play, and she's gonna totally get a crash course in the best and the worst.
Oh, yeah.
So I have a 9-year-old nephew and a 15-year-old nephew, and they have been schooled.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the one of the things that I can give to my to my relatives that not a lot of people can.
Oh, for sure. I think it's such a cool time that we're in now, where people grew up with games, now are having their own kids and really passing that legacy on.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for one day for that legacy to pass on in my family too.
Absolutely.
What about the recent years? What are some of your favorite games in recent years?
In recent years, let's see. Celeste, absolutely. The Fallout series, I love Fallout 3, Fallout New Vegas, Fallout 4. All three of those games have like special places in my heart, just because like they just allow you to escape and become something completely different,
Sure. Yeah.
They're just a lot of fun. Trying to think of what else. Like I said, the NHL series, I basically have every NHL game from EA Sports that's ever been like created. I was a huge fan of the NHL Face-Off series on the original PlayStation. I had all of those.
Was that the arcadey one?
No. That's NHL Hits.
Oh, that's right.
And that's a great game too. That's a great series too. They released a few of those. I'm a huge Pokemon fan. I get a lot of flack for it, but I've been playing Pokemon games again since they were available. I ran a video game. I used to run video game tournaments all the time at this video game store near my house, and we had a original Pokemon Red tournament that I announced like 2 months before to give like everybody like ample opportunity to train and create a team. So that was a lot of fun. Yeah, I love Pokemon. I cannot wait for it to come out on Switch.
Oh, me too.
It's not going to be the same, because I mean, linking Pokemon Go, I don't know if that was the right decision, but
yeah,
I'm still going to play it regardless.
Same.
But I really would love to like have the Pokemon that I've had for 10-15 years from the DS that found their way to the 3DS find their way onto my Switch, but I don't know if that's ever going to happen. So I
think probably next year.
Yeah,
it sounds like the more core game that they're putting out next gen.
Yeah,
or next year rather, should be. Hopefully, we'll be able to get everything from like the Pokemon Bank and bring it all in.
That's what I want. So yeah, Pokemon, NHL, Fallout, Celeste. Trying to think of what else that I've played a lot of. I really like unique games. I like games that are different, games that try and do things different. I remember when Phoenix Wright first came out.
Yes.
I was just like, this is really freaking cool. Like like Fire Pro Wrestling, just because that's a wrestling game that's just like that you're going to lose like 90% of the time. Like it's so hard, and it's so strategic, and it's so different from the WWE games that 2K releases now, where it's all about like flash and recreating the TV experience and stuff like that. When the Fire Pro Wrestling games are about just like having really long like chess like matches. So that's the thing. I like games that try and do that. Games that try and do lots of different things.
That's awesome. Yeah, I found more and more over the years I've gravitated more towards indie games, just because it seems like the indie developers are really trying to push the envelope a bit more than the AAA studios that have these big budgets, and they've got shareholders they have to please, and so you get these really safe games from a lot of the AAA studios that the indie developers don't have shareholders to please. So
absolutely,
they put out a passionate project, and those tend to last a lot longer with me.
It's one of my problems too that I have with video game journalism too, is that like all these AAA companies are like bankrolling all of these big, video game journalism websites. They're placing $1 million worth of ads. So like if a game comes out and it gets like a 6, that game's not really a 6. That game is like a 4. But they don't want to lose their ad revenue. So, it's like indie games take a lot more risks. They have a lot more to lose. A lot of the people making these indie games are bankrolling themselves and hoping and praying for a big shot and a big chance to make it. So I have a lot more trust in the indie game community now than I do in AAA games. But then at the same time too, like again, there are some amazing AAA gaming companies out there. Like a lot of people talk crap about them for the microtransactions and stuff, but every year EA releases an awesome Madden, and like the NHL series is one of every year there's something different that's in there that they improve upon the core gameplay. And Insomniac, I mean, those guys make amazing games. The last God of War that just came out, I thought it was amazing. So there's a lot of Ubisoft makes the prettiest games. Like just visually, and they've been that way for almost 30 years now. From like Rayman, they've made beautiful games. So I don't have anything per se against AAA companies. I just feel like you nailed it right on the head when you said that they don't take nearly as many chances as they should, because they have a lot more to lose than they have millions of dollars to lose and thousands of people's jobs to lose, when indie gamers just have their livelihood.
I've noticed a recent trend. A lot of AAA companies are basically birthing their own indie companies within to kind of create those experiences, but giving the AAA budget. I know Square Enix put together, what was it, like Tokyo RPG Studio or Japan RPG Studio? Forgot the name, and that's what they published I Am Setsuna under. And EA's put together a couple indie teams, and Ubisoft has global teams all over the place, but a lot of smaller companies within them focusing on those smaller indie titles. Those I'm interested in seeing. Like Unravel. Did you play Unravel from EA?
No, I haven't played it yet.
It came out a couple years ago. They just put a sequel out recently, but it's like this beautiful like a yarn thing, like the little yarn guy that you're controlling, and you've got the mechanic of like being able to like unwind yourself and use it kind of as like a grappling hook type thing to get over ledges, and it's just basic platforming, but really like a different type of game that you wouldn't see from EA. So kind of cool. I'm glad to see that there's the main big games are going to be the safer titles, but they're still trying to push the boundaries in certain areas. So I'm all about that.
Same here.
So Patrick, I've got a tough one for you. If you had to take one console and head to a desert island, what would it be?
Oh, that is such an impossible question. But I have to say that I have every console that I've ever owned in my entire life. I've never gotten rid of anything that I've ever purchased, probably since the age of 14. So,
wow.
Yeah. Ever since I started working, I promised I wasn't going to be one of those kids that I would just see all these disillusioned faces in GameStop, these kids selling away their entire childhood. And every time I go to GameStop and I see a kid trading in like a ton of games, I tell them, like, listen, you may not think that you're ever going to like want to play these games again, but I promise you that you will, and you're making a mistake. And the people at GameStop are like, no, shut up. So
I regret every time I've had to trade in, because when I was younger, I pretty much had to trade my consoles in to pay for the next one. My parents were teaching me responsibility and all that. So between that and having like a very small allowance, it was necessary for me to be able to upgrade. But man, I would kill to go back and play some of those older consoles.
I was in the same exact spot. Like I was like lower middle class growing up. Like my Genesis, I used to play in my room on a black and white TV. Like I didn't know Sonic was blue. Like we weren't even poor. We were po. Like we couldn't afford like the O and the R. And that's one of the reasons why, like, the Game Boy was always so important to me as a kid, because I could take it with me, and like, I had Tetris, and Tetris was like, there was like really like no way to beat Tetris. I remember the first time that I beat it, I was just like, all right, so I guess I'm just gonna play again, like. And then like Super Mario Land was an amazing game, Kirby, and then like Pokemon changed it for me. So it's just like I have so many memories on that console. The Castlevania on that console is great. The Bugs Bunny puzzle game is great on that game. Like Bugs Bunny, like Crazy Castle, such a good game. There's so many excellent games on the original Game Boy. There's some good sports games on there. That there's a reason why that's one of the most that's one of the top selling systems of all time, because they just did so many things right with that console. So yeah, if I had to pick one, it would probably be, I'm going to catch a lot of flack, and I am a huge supporter of the original PlayStation and PlayStation 2 and the Xbox 360 and the Super Nintendo. Like, I think these are all amazing consoles, but like if I'm stuck on a desert island, one, I'm not going to have any power. So I'm going to need a handheld console, and nothing against the Vita, nothing against the PSP or the N-Gage or the Lynx or any of those other handheld consoles. But as far as I'm concerned, the original Game Boy did it better than anybody else.
That's fair. That's I almost feel like I would go with probably like a Game Boy Advance, just to kind of be able to play the best of both worlds.
Well, see, now you're like a cheater, because now, I know. You're right.
That's not a purist. I'll have to
reconsider.
What?
You know what we're gonna do? I'm gonna change my answer then too. I'm gonna go with my Spider-Man Game Boy Advance SP.
All right.
So this way I could play Fire Pro Wrestling on the Game Boy Advance, and I can play the original Pokemon on the Game Boy, and I could keep it well protected because of the clamshell design, and it would hold a nice charge for like 8 hours. So,
and you could play at night. You got the backlit screen.
Yes. But see, my Game Boy has a backlit screen. So
all right,
my Frankenstein Game Boy. So,
all right, I got one more tough question for you.
Yeah, sure.
If you had to pick your top 5 games of all time, I know you knew it was coming at some point. I mean, you've got this vast history and collection. So, top 5 games of all time, what would they be?
NHL 94, Pokemon Red, Final Fantasy 7, Fallout 3, and Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3.
Number 3?
Yeah, that's just for me, that was the one that it all came together. Like, I liked 1 and 2.
Yeah.
But 3 on the PlayStation 2, just something. Yeah. It just like everything clicked. It was like I loved Tony Hawk 2 on the original Xbox.
Oh, okay.
It was really good on the original Xbox, but I feel like on the PlayStation, like it wasn't where it needed to be yet. And for some reason, like everything just clicked for Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3.
Yeah, I do remember playing that. That was like the first next-gen version of Tony Hawk.
Yes,
and you're just blown away by the visuals. I remember, looking back on it now, I'm sure it looks like garbage, but at the time I was like, wow, this is the most realistic thing I've ever seen. I'm never going to see anything better. Interesting thing I did with Tony Hawk that probably not very many people did. The original Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, I hooked up one of those Dance Dance Revolution mats and played with that. So it almost felt like man, it was like breakdancing, honestly, because you're getting down and you're trying to do these combos, holding 2 buttons at once and holding the arrows. And then when my buddy and I were just like, let's see if this works. All these people trying to beat Dark Souls these days with like Guitar Hero controllers. Try playing Tony Hawk's Pro Skater and actually doing it. You're in there pressing the buttons and you're like skating when you're up, but then you gotta like drop down and you're like playing Twister when you're trying to do these tricks.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah, I know. I don't know why we tried that, but it worked. And
did you have the premium mat?
No. I had those shitty like fold up plastic ones that got wrinkled and playing on carpet, so you're always moving around on there.
I was hardcore, man. I had I still have it. But it's like behind a shelf right now in my man cave because I haven't played Dance Revolution in like 10 years. But like
Yeah.
I splurged on like the really good mat.
Oh yeah, the metal
And,
ones.
oh my god, not the metal one. It was like the in
Oh.
between one. It was like the foam that like the kids.
Oh yes,
But
yes.
and you have to zipper. You have to like put the foam in and then zipper it closed.
Yeah.
That was a really good mat. That was totally worth like the $80 or $100 that I spent on it.
Yes.
But now, oh my god, my wife is gonna kill me. But now, like after this is over, I'm definitely gonna have to try
Just bust it out, man.
Tony Hawk on that mat. Oh my god,
It's fun, honestly.
you're a madman.
Yeah. um, taking it back to your book for a moment. And after speaking with so many of these game creators, would you yourself ever consider becoming involved with the development process of a title?
Well, see, that's the thing that's so funny because I'm actually writing the story for a game right now. The name of the game is Treason in Space, and I'm working alongside designers that have and developers and animators that have worked on games like Gladius, BioShock Infinite, Sunset Overdrive, God of War, Madden 18, Overwatch. Like, so
Wow.
I'm living the dream. And so we got off a conference call a couple of weeks ago, and the engineer, Jeffrey Paquette, who's awesome, and his brother Pete Paquette, they're like the main like developers of this game. And I could say that it's basically like a combination of like, you ever play the Alien games, like the light gun games in the arcade?
No.
They're freaking frenetic and scary as hell. It's like the enemies just don't stop coming. It's like if Contra had a baby with like Battlestar Galactica and Alien. Like that's what this game is. It's like like a 70s like sci-fi like corridor shooter. It's really cool, and I'm writing the story for it. And after we got off a conference call, like a 2-hour conferencing call, like just working out like the finer points of the plot and stuff like that, Jeffrey was like, all right, this is what you're gonna do. You're gonna go on Unity.com and you're gonna download this, and then you're gonna download Source Tree, and then you're gonna do this. And it was like 25 minutes, and then now I have access to the game as he's developing it. And I'm like, dude, I feel like I feel like a developer now. And he goes, dude, you are. He's like,
That's so cool, man.
Yeah. So it's like, if you would have told me a year ago that I would have been like that, this would have been the situation, I would have told you that you were absolutely crazy.
Right.
But that's exactly what happened. It's like I went from a video game a journalist that covered the video game industry to a guy that wrote a book about the video game industry to first a voice actor, and then a story editor, then a voice actor, and now I'm writing the story for a game. And like I have like a huge hand in the development of this game, and I am super happy about it. So
that's such a crucial position for a game itself. I mean, creating the story, because everything revolves around it.
Yeah, if you guys are more interested, you could find out more about the game on treasoninspace.com. Pete and Jeffrey Paquette, they post stuff on the blog all the time for the game, like how development is going. We're only like a couple of months into development, but it's going to be a really unique first-person shooter that like really leverages like solid animation and good story, which is usually not the case with a lot of first-person shooters. A lot of first-person shooters are like mainly about gunplay, which I mean, this game is totally going to have excellent gunplay, but it's going to have a super solid story. Like I said, I'm not a humble person. But it's going to have really good animation too. Like I have to say too, Pete Paquette is a super talented animator. He's worked on movies like Rio and Robots and and Ice Age. So like this is an indie game with a total like AAA team and me. So
there you go, man. Rounding that out.
So yeah,
that's cool.
It's a lot of fun.
I'm excited to check that out. So you mentioned you've done voiceover work for characters too in a number of video games. What drew you to voice acting?
It's funny because it's like I'm always on Twitter. I'm always looking for like that next like hot indie game, and I'm always using hashtags and looking stuff up. So I came across this game called The Padre, and it looked like Minecraft. It kind of reminded me of like Minecraft and like Castlevania. And there's this priest, and it was like a GIF online, and this priest is like walking through like this forest, and like the tree came alive and like slapped him, you know. And it was a really cool little like quick GIF, or GIF, whatever you want to call it. And so I emailed the developers and I'm like, guys, I'd love to interview you for reviewfix.com. So we did the interview and it came out good and it got good traffic and stuff. And the guys were happy. And I was like the first person to ever interview them. And they were like, do you want to try the game? And it was in alpha, not in alpha, in beta. So as soon as I started playing it, I realized that it was like kind of like a spiritual successor to the Alone in the Dark series. Really cool.
Okay.
Yeah, really cool game in its own right. And but I noticed that these guys are from Budapest, and their English wasn't great. And the fact that it's a point and click survival horror game, story is everything. You know, if there's errors in the dialogue, stuff like that, people are going to go, oh my god, because it's so exposed. You know, right. So I offered to edit the game, like to edit the dialogue for the game, and they said yes, and we came up with a price. So now it's like, oh my god, now I'm like being paid to like work in the video game industry. So then what happened was I was editing dialogue for like a couple of months and it was going great, and we're about to like launch our Kickstarter for the game, and our voice actor left. So they were like, oh man, we need a voice actor. So then I was like, well, I'm like, I can do it. And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, I can do it. And the thing is, Father Alexander the Padre, he's like this British guy, and he's kind of like, he's not a very happy priest. You know, like he's pretty like grumbly and grouchy and stuff like that. And the guy's voice was very Russell Brandy. You know, it was like, oh, I'm like a wacky Englishman, you know, and it didn't match the dark, somber tone of the game, you know?
Yeah.
So I went into my man cave and I'm like, all right, I gotta like pull a voice out for these guys. So I've been a really big fan of Don LaFontaine and Pablo Francisco for a really long time, and they do that dark, like that deep movie trailer voice, like, in a world, one man, Robert De Niro, you know, blah blah blah, rated PG-13, like that voice.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can't do that because that would just be like a joke. So I'm like, I need to like add that English flavor that guy had. So then a bloke came up with this voice, Alexander the Padre. I am a zombie hunting priest, and I sent the video, the audio over to the developers, and they loved it. They ate it up, and
I love that.
You know, all of a sudden they're like, all right, give us like 45 minutes, and they threw it in the game.
That's awesome, man.
And so now that was in October of last year. So now the game's out on Steam. There's a bunch of other plans like on the horizon for the game. So it's like I'm not at liberty to tell yet, but like it's available on Steam now. It's a lot of fun. They're adding controller support to the game. So if you don't want like the classic point and click experience, they're adding controller support, and it works great. So then after that happened, it's like, I'm story editing, I'm doing voice acting, I'm promoting my book, and I didn't want to be a one-hit wonder. So there was this game that came out called Relentless Rex, and it was being developed, and the game looks so freaking pretty. Like, Matt, it looked like Rayman had like a baby with like the original like Wonder Boy on like TurboGrafx 16. It was just so like it's basically like a runner, where like you play this cute little dinosaur and you're running from this massive T-Rex. So the guy that created the game, Kevin Wins, he drew every frame of animation in the game.
Wow.
Like, this guy is mega talented. And I was following him on Twitter and Instagram, again, Twitter. And I was basically busting his chops. I'm like, dude, like, if you need a voice for Rex, I can do it. And he was posting things about like how he would love to have Kevin Michael Richardson do the voice for Rex, and blah blah blah. So I was like, dude, let me do the voice. And he's like, oh, listen, I would feel bad if like what you gave me wasn't good, and like I don't want to. I'm like, no, listen. I'm like, I've only auditioned for one role and I got it. I'm like, my head is like way too big. I need to either be told no, like don't do this anymore, or no, you're good, like da 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 da. So he gave me a whole bunch of things to read, and again I went back in the man cave and I'm like, all right, can't do the Padre, so I got to come up with another voice. So I love Kevin Michael Richardson. I think he's an amazing voice actor. And I listened to him do Shredder from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's Rex, but with something else. I'm like, it needs something else. So I just decided to like kind of merge Kevin Michael Richardson's Shredder with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
So it's like, oh, I'm Relentless Rex and I'm over here. I'm going to bite you and chew you. I'm a T-Rex, you puny human. Yeah, you know.
And I sent it over to Kevin and he was like, dude, this is really cool. Oh my God. And then next thing you know, I'm doing trailers for the game and doing the Kickstarter.
Wow. Yeah.
So, holy crap. And, you know, so it just worked out really good. And it's funny though, because like the voice acting stuff was one thing, and Relentless Rex came like last. But in between the Padre and Relentless Rex, that's how I met Pete Paquette. Like I was on his podcast talking about the book, and at the end of the podcast, he said to me, he's like, dude, if you ever like really want to get involved with video games, let me know, and I'll help you make that happen.
Wow.
And I was like, I said it like, yeah, I do. And he's like, okay. He's like, we'll talk soon. So I didn't know him very well. So I was kind of like, yeah, people say shit like that all the time. Like, oh, yeah, right. I'll help you. 2 weeks later, man, he messages me on Facebook and he's like, so you ready to like get started? And I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, he's like, I'm going to put you on a conference call with my brother and I, and we're going to tell you like our idea for this game. And we want you to create the world around this idea. And you can add and delete and take away like whatever you want. You're going to characters, you're going to do everything. And they're like, we have this one idea for this one character, and we want you to do the voice for that character too. So I'm like, oh my God. So it's been whirlwind. And if you would have said to me like 5 years ago, like if you could ever voice act, what would you want to do? And I would say, you know, I would just want to be like the NBA Jam guy, like boom shakalaka.
Yeah.
And I've interviewed that guy before, and he's an amazing guy. Yeah. But what happened was a couple weeks ago, there's a game made by the Suspicious Ducks called the Caillou Offensive, and it's basically like Rampage with like GTA, the original GTA graphics. It's a top-down. Okay. It's a top-down like world destroyer. And they needed a narrator, so I reached out to them, and I'm like, oh, I do Relentless Rex, I do P05 and in Treason in Space, and I do the Padre, and they're like, yeah, we know you are. I'm like, what?
Whoa.
Like, so they're like, what could you do? And I told them like, I'm like, I would love to be the narrator for your trailers and stuff. And they're like, okay, you could do that. And then also too, there's like a winner and a loser screen like in the game.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh my God, when somebody loses in the game, I'm like, loser, lose. Like, and it's like old school, like arcade. Like if you would die,
right.
And I'm like that. I've come full circle, you know. So it's just been the last year has been so much fun. Like I couldn't have imagined that any of this stuff would ever happen. So
right.
And I hope I'm just getting started.
Man. Oh, for sure. Have you ever considered becoming a full-time voice actor?
I will tell you this, that like I've been paid for all of my time that I've done. Luckily, there's a lot of people that don't get paid when they first started out. I've been lucky that I've been paid for everything that I've done. But I would say that like it's not substantial enough to quit my full-time job. Sure. I'm a full-time college professor that is a couple of months away from like tenure. So like I've busted my hump to like get where I am academically. But the best part of like having my job in academia is that like I have summers off. I only work 4 days a week, so it's like the reason why I'm able to write these books now and do all these and do the voice acting is because I have this amazing full-time job that like pays like my bills and my credit card bills and like helps support me, my wife, my daughter, my dog, my cat and stuff. And it's like if voice acting could do that and video games could do that, that's a super tough question.
Yeah.
You know? But it's like I get so much gratification out of like teaching and spending time with young minds and influencing them and things like that. Sure. So, but I definitely think that like when I retire from teaching, that I would still I hope this answers your question, that when I retire from teaching, that I would still actively be involved in the video game industry. That's like, I hope, like, up until the day that I die, that I'm still involved in writing the stories that I've been writing and playing a part in the video game industry. So
That's
like
awesome.
two of the most important things to me right now, you know?
Oh yeah. And I mean, a lot of that content's on your website over at reviewfix.com. You're currently the editor-in-chief over there. What types of content do you review over there besides games?
So I've done so many crazy things with that site, man. Like, I've covered the Tribeca Film Festival, I've covered the Sundance Film Festival, I've covered Comic-Con before, just to rattle off some of the people that I've interviewed on that site. Let's see, Channing Tatum, Paul Walker, Philip Seymour Hoffman, tons of musicians. Rex Brown from he's from Down. There's Mark Tremonti from Creed. I've interviewed so many people that, like, I'd never ever thought I'd get an opportunity. Mark Mothersbaugh, the lead singer of Devo, who also wrote he wrote the theme song to the Rugrats.
Really?
Yeah.
What? I didn't know that.
Yes, absolutely. He also did the music for Happy Gilmore too.
No way. What?
Yeah. I'm trying to think of who else. But, like, that's the thing. It's like, I've had an opportunity I've interviewed the creators of the Ninja Turtles, Tommy from the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers on Review Fix.
Yeah.
Like, I've had this opportunity to interview Dana Snyder from Aqua Teen Hunger Force, who plays Master Shake. Like, I've had so many cool opportunities because of the site, and it was just, I remember I was covering minor league baseball and minor league hockey at the time, and I was in a relationship that was, like, just kind of like crashing and burning, and I was seeing myself having a lot more spare time. And I'm like, you know what? Like, I'm teaching during the day and covering hockey and baseball at night, which I loved, but I'm like, I need something else. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to start an entertainment website. I'm like, I have all these video games, all of these books, all this music. Like, I have this wealth of knowledge that I want to share. And the best part of Review Fix is, like, I've published over 350 people, many of them for the first time on the site. And a lot of them are my students, but a lot of them are former colleagues or current colleagues. So it's like, it's great because, I mean, I have friends that will go, oh, I'm going to see a play. Like, can I review it? And I'm like, well, I can get you in for free, so cancel your tickets and, like, we'll get you in. We'll do it the right way and blah, 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 you know? So it's like, Review Fix is like this amazing, like, toy that I have. I haven't paid for, like, a video game, music, comic books, or, like, to see a play in, like, almost 10 years, you know? So
that's so cool.
Yeah.
That's the dream for sure. What are some of your favorite topics that you cover on the website?
Probably professional wrestling. I love professional wrestling. It's not nearly as good now as it used to be, but I just love interacting with people on Facebook and on my personal page because they know that I watch, like, a ton of professional wrestling. And it gets good traffic on the site. Professional wrestling and, like, indie games are, like, two of the things that I enjoy covering the most. But, like, I've been getting into a lot of author interviews lately. I've been interviewing a lot of authors because that's the thing too. I want to try and tap into people's minds that do that for a living, because obviously that's something that I want to do now for the rest of my life. So I'm trying to, like, learn through interviewing. And that's the funny part too, because it's like, I told Pete Paquette the other day, it's like, I feel like I'm more than just a writer, like, for the game. I feel like I've played so many games that, like, I could be, like, their tester in a way, or, like, I could say, you know, like, we're having this problem in this game that sounds a lot like a problem that this developer had. Because, like, I'm like a video game historian at the same time too. So it's like, I feel like all of this stuff leading up to this point has, like, prepared me to be, like, one of those, like, sleeper members of, like, a development team, like that guy that, like, people would think, oh yeah, he's not that important, but then he plays, like, a role because he has, like, all of these, like, the sum. My overall, like, worth isn't equal to the sum of my parts, you know?
Sure.
So yeah, so, like, I feel like yeah. I don't know if I answered your question.
It absolutely did. Yeah. So you've also had your work published on some big websites like the New York Times, the New York Daily News, Yahoo, and more. What's it like having your work published on a major website versus creating your own content on your own website at Review Fix?
I would say that, like, some of the greatest moments of my journalism career were, like, I was an editor at NBC for 2.5 years. And I was an editor. I was their night weekend editor. So like Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, like from 4 o'clock in the afternoon to like 1 o'clock in the morning, I was like the main editor at NBC Local Integrated Media. So like we're talking like NFL playoffs, like Super Bowls, Olympics, Saturday Night Live, like super crazy stuff. Like I was the editor on call when the Trayvon Martin verdict came in. I was the editor on call when Paul Walker died. I was the editor on call when Whitney Houston died. I was the editor on call when Philip Seymour Hoffman died. So it's like I learned a lot about managing like an audience, managing social media, managing other people. So I feel like if I just had Review Fix, it would be great, but I wouldn't be able to help my writers get to the next level. And it's like I tell my writers all the time, like, I don't want you to stay with me. Like I want you to write like a handful of articles so you get some good articles under your belt and then you go somewhere else. You know, like I want to be like the Montreal Expos of like online journalism. You know,
just prep them and then push them out to the big leagues.
Yep, yeah, absolutely. And I want them to go back and be like, yeah, like when people ask them the same question, like, oh, you know, what do you prefer? And they'll go, oh, yeah, well, I would rather work for Forbes, but I had a lot of fun writing for Pat Hickey when I first got started. And he was a bastard to me, and he made me do 4 or 5 edits to a piece. But you know what? That's the same thing that you know NBC did, and blah 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 blah. So, you know, that's. I love writing for my own site, but like it hurts sometimes not having editors look at your stuff. Like when you're the only guy doing it, sometimes you make silly, stupid mistakes that like you would never make with somebody else's work, you know. But yeah, it all goes hand in hand. Like I feel like if I didn't work for NBC, then Review Fix wouldn't be like what it is now. Like we have over 18,000 articles on the site, you know, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that like I learned how to be super productive when I was at NBC, you know?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, every time I pop over there, there's like multiple new articles that are up. So you guys are cranking them out over there.
Yeah, it's like 5 to 7 new articles a day, you know?
Yeah. That's very cool.
Yeah.
You also did previous work as a national video games writer at Examiner.com, where you had some of your work featured in national ad campaigns for Disney, Nintendo, and EA Sports. What was that experience like?
Oh my God. Examiner was like, they don't exist anymore, so I could talk as much like crap about it as I want. But it was like the Wild West. So when I first started writing there, it was like I remember every day I would go and see the rankings, like the page view rankings, and the guy that was like number 1 was like the worst writer, like grammatically the worst writer. It's just he knew how he wrote very quickly, and he wrote about topical things.
Right.
Then I said to myself, like, okay, if I can write quicker and I can write about topical things, I can get more traffic than this guy.
Yeah.
And that's what I usually do. Like I'll go into a room and I'll see who's working the hardest, and I'll say, okay, this is what I'm going to have to do. I'm going to have to put a hit out on this guy, you know? And things just like started taking off for me at Examiner. And it got to the point where like 2K paid to fly me out a couple of years to cover like the WWE games in Los Angeles, and I was going to like hotel rooms in the city to play like Guitar Hero Live with the developers and like hang out with the people from The Last of Us, and like I had so many great opportunities there, and like the Disney Infinity people were amazing to me for, you know, the year and a half, 2 years that game was really like, you know, pertinent.
Yeah.
So and EA was amazing to me. Like I got to interview like Carlos Condit in an octagon and play the game with him and stuff.
Wow.
Like, tons of cool opportunities like that. But it was really like the Wild West. Where like I had an editor that like tried to do some shady shit to me. Like when I first started, like I reviewed like a Nintendo like first party like party game. I forgot which one it was. It was like one of the Wii sports variations, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
It was like the winter one or something like that. And I gave it like 3 out of 5 stars. And then I went back like 20 minutes later in my review, the headline changed and they gave it 4 stars. So then I went back into the article and I changed the headline back and I gave it back the third star instead of the 4th star. And I told them that if they touched my stuff again, that I was going to blow them up online, that I was going to tell them what they did and stuff. So yeah. In terms of like ethics and credibility, like I feel like the higher ranking people in Examiner lacked a lot of those things. I remember there was one time where I had gotten one of my students a job at Examiner, and he had just graduated, and I got him a job there, and he was making like pretty good bank. But my editor knew that like we both lived in Brooklyn.
Mm-hmm.
Brooklyn's huge. Like Brooklyn, like
Yeah.
he lived like 2 hours away from me. So he shipped out like Madden 14 to me or something like that for Xbox One, and I didn't have an Xbox One, so I'm like, bro, I can't play this. And he goes, oh, well, just give it to Manny. And I'm like, first off, he lives 2 hours away from me, and then secondly, like who are you? Like, why
Right.
So then he's like, oh, well, then ship it back to me, and like he wanted me to pay for like the shipping and stuff. Like, it was really like there was some ghetto stuff going on there, and it's like at NBC, like that stuff like that would never happen. Like, I remember if like I wasn't feeling well at NBC, they would be like, oh, well, then just call a car and like, put it on like our card and we'll drive you home, or blah, blah, blah. Or like, oh, I'm not feeling well today. And they're like, well, can you work from home? And I would go, absolutely. And they go, all right, you know what? We'll email you a key fob so you can get all your work done on your home computer and stuff. Like they like went out of their way to like take care of you. You couldn't take off because they needed you, but like they did like whatever they had to do, like to make you happy while you were there. Examiner gave me tons of great exposure, but they undervalued me and thousands of other people that wrote for them. So I feel like that was their big problem.
Yeah. Well, and that's probably part of the downfall too.
That's why they don't exist anymore. Yeah.
So everything comes around.
Yep.
Well, yeah. Well, Patrick, you've worn so many hats in your career so far, from professor to author to media journalist to voice actor and beyond. Which of those was your favorite experience?
Oof. It's like, I think just being able to say that I've done all of that,
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, it's not just one,
Right.
It's like being able to say that I did all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And to say that I'm still here and I'm still mentally sound, and that I'm only 35 and that I still have a lot more to give. I think that's the most important thing. And that's the thing. One of my idols is Teddy Roosevelt. And the reason why I love Teddy Roosevelt is just because he was like this Renaissance man. He did so many different things. So I try and emulate that in my own Brooklyn type of way.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I like it. Is there any other field you've considered going into that you haven't touched yet?
I've been in bands. I was in bands when I was a teenager. I sang. I mean, I would love to have like a song like one day on like Spotify. That would be awesome to like search my name and find like a crappy like song on Spotify. But I mean,
throw one together.
Yeah, I probably could. It would be a lot of fun,
Yeah.
But the biggest things for me was like getting involved in the video game industry, and then writing this book. Those were like the two things that were like the most important to me recently that happened. Because it just changed everything. Because before it was like my friends would go, oh yeah, if you have a question about video games, ask Pat. And now it's like, now I have people message me that I don't even know asking me questions about video games because of the book, so it's amazing. Cool. So
yeah, man, just getting out to the community, and that's great. Well, Patrick, thank you so much for your time and joining me this week on In Your Element. It's been great hearing about your illustrious career. Is there anything else you'd like to let the listeners know?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that the book is available on Amazon, Target, Barnes & Noble, anywhere fine books are sold.
Perfect.
Also, if you go to my official website, patrickhickeyjr.com, there's actually an order button. You can order it directly from me, and I will sign it for you. I will throw in some bookmarks and autograph them. If you tell me a little bit about yourself and things that you're interested in, I always sneak surprises into people's books. Like, I've had people from Pittsburgh and Pennsylvania order the book, and I've thrown in like some retro baseball cards and stuff like that in there, cool. Or hockey cards and stuff. I had a guy order the book the other day from Wisconsin, and I was looking all over like my man cave for like some Green Bay Packers swag, and I like didn't have anything. I was looking for like, a football card or something like that, and so I just signed a whole bunch of bookmarks and I put like a dozen signed bookmarks in there for him. But yeah, you can order the book directly from me on patrickhickeyjr.com. I'm available on ReviewFix at Twitter, Patrick Hickey Jr. at Facebook, and Patrick Hickey Jr. on Instagram. And I'm always around to talk shop and talk video games and stuff like that. I'm not one of those people that doesn't like to talk. I just want to create an experience for people to make them feel as comfortable as possible, like around me and like my brand and things like that. So don't ever be scared to come into my neck of the woods and talk shop with me. Yeah, man. Well, thanks again, Pat. It's been a pleasure. If you have any questions you'd like to ask Patrick, reach out to him on his Twitter. Again, that's at ReviewFix. And if you have any questions for the show, email me at the email address inyourelementpodcast@gmail.com. I'll answer your questions on the next show if you'd like me to. And don't forget to subscribe to the show on whatever podcast service you use to consume In Your Element. Also, take a moment to drop a 5-star review on iTunes. It definitely helps out with discoverability for the show. Until next time, see you later, Elementalists.